If you like the sweet science, get ready to talk boxing on the Gloved Fist podcast with top boxing writers Frank Lotierzo and Jack Hirsch. Frank, a former amateur boxer out of Philadelphia, writes for NY Fights and can be seen on the Boxing Channel. Jack, an amateur boxer who competed in the New York Golden Gloves, was a 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association. And now, here's Frank Lotierzo and Jack Hirsch.
Good evening, and we're back. This is Glove Fist. My name is Frank Lotierzo, full-time observer, part-time writer, joined by co-host Jack Hirsch, former president of the Boxing Writers Association of America. Jack, how are you tonight?
Really good. Someone threw you a compliment, Frank, someone you respect, Russell Peltz. I was out to lunch with him last week, and out of nowhere, he says, no one could break down fighters and analyze them the way Frank Lotierzo can. So he threw you a compliment, and I didn't bother to counter. Normally I counter when it comes to you, and I, say something a little on the negative side. I let it go. I didn't confirm it. I didn't say you're right, Russell, but I didn't put the remark down at all.
Thanks for having my back, Jack. And Russell, the check cleared, so I'm glad. And Jack, by the way, I like to throw you curveballs, and we have a lot of boxing to talk about tonight. Let me just say one thing that'll throw you off. Alexander Ovechkin broke the all-time scoring record in the NHL. He broke Gretzky's record for goals scored in a career in the same amount of games. And I only have one thing to say to that. Two things. Congratulations, Ovi. And Bobby, you are still the greatest hockey player in the history of the game.
Well, it's the same as boxing, Frank. You could judge who's had the greatest career and who was better at peak value. There are two ways of looking at it. For example, no one would call Roy Jones one of the 10 greatest fighters of all time. I mean, you don't hear anyone say it. You don't even hear them put him really in the top 20, even though I think he certainly belongs there. But if you talk about peak value, him at his very best, you could maybe put him up against anyone. And if you said to someone, Roy Jones is the greatest fighter I've ever seen, it would have to be at peak value if you held that opinion.
And it's a short list of guys who you could say were more talented than him. And I know you do, I go back and forth on peak value. Obviously, you can't compare Orr, who only played about 8 seasons, compared to guys that played 20. But as you said, peak value. Who was better? I had the same argument, that this week about George Foreman, because I read an article and it's like George Foreman is usually one slot behind Larry Holmes. And Jack, the argument is Holmes was champ for 7 years and made 20 title defenses. My argument to that is drop Foreman in Holmes' title reign and tell me who he's even close to an underdog against. No one.
But there's so many variables involved. I love making arguments. I never even thought of this. Holmes, when he was old in his 40s, he may have been a better fighter than Foreman in his 40s, because keep this in mind, Holmes gave Evander Holyfield a heck of a good fight. It was a reasonably close decision loss. Not disputed, Holyfield won the fight. We're not arguing that point. The same when he fought Oliver McCall. These were the, two top heavyweights basically of their day. Holyfield was, and McCall was close to being it. And compare that to Foreman's fights in the 40s. Like when he fought Michael Moorer, was being beaten every second until he, knocked out a weak chin fighter. And, he lost to Tommy Morrison. And I could visualize an old Larry Holmes beating that version of Tommy Morrison. But with that said, I'm not arguing the case if you put Foreman ahead of Holmes.
Let me just give you the
competition. I think George does beat Holmes.
Let me give you the only thing I'll say about when they were both old. Holmes may have won a round or two against Holyfield more than Foreman did, but Foreman hurt him and beat him up a lot more, and that was Styles. Yeah. And everybody says Michael Moore has a weak chin. Who stopped him? Foreman. Holyfield had to drop him 5 times to stop him. And David Tua, who may be the biggest single shot puncher since Foreman,
Bert Cooper dropped him a couple of times, hurt him.
Didn't
pretty
stop
bad.
him, but dropped him twice. Yes, that was a great fight.
He didn't have a good chin, Michael Moore. I mean, he got away with it when he was a light heavyweight. You know, certain guys he could get away.
Nobody put him down at light heavyweight.
Yeah, but he didn't go against any really.
His opposition was weak. I agree with that.
Right. Had he gone against a Beterbiev, a Michael Spinks, a Bob Forster, that would have been a little bit iffy.
I agree. And Beterbiev and Bivol, we might as well go there, who we both agree they both could have fought in any era. It just was released today that Bivol is giving up the WBC title, and he's going to fight a trilogy bout with Beterbiev in, I believe, either October or November of this year. Is that what you saw too?
Well, but I didn't see the exact date, but it shows you how stupid these undisputed titles are. And you underline the word stupid, put it in big capital letters. People buy into it. I can't stand the word undisputed for the simple reason whoever picks up a so-called undisputed title, which is holding all 4 belts, he's going to get stripped anyway. So why did the fighters give a darn to be undisputed? I mean, we know who.
But Jack, don't you?
We know Bivol is the world light heavyweight champion.
And I think that's what they mean. That's what they mean. When you're undisputed, you're clearly the number one guy. Bivol is the number one guy, as Crawford was at welterweight, and Usyk is at heavyweight.
Wait, no. Daniel Dubois holds the IBF heavyweight title now. So now we have to hear this nonsense from Daniel Dubois to Usyk. Let's unify the title. Title is unified. Usyk is the champion.
Right.
What idiots in their right mind think Daniel Dubois is the heavyweight champion? While we're at it, let's strip the Eagles of the Super Bowl title. Let's give it to.
I'll go with that. We can do that.
Yeah. I know you would buy into that.
Absolutely.
Lamar Jackson, new champions, the Baltimore Ravens. Let the Baltimore Ravens play the Washington Commanders to see who, is the new champion, according to one of the football bodies. Imagine there were 4 of them. It's all dumb stuff. Listen, if I'm Dimitri Bivol, I would be ticked off. I tell Benavidez this. If you fight for that title, you can go ahead and do it, but I'm never going to fight you. I'm never going to fight you if you show me that level of disrespect and fight for that title. And I will keep my word. I'd never fight the darn guy. I say, yeah, you could hold your IBF title. I hold the world title.
Jack, but you and I both know it's about money. And if I'm Bivol and I get a chance to fight for that WBC belt, I'm taking it. And then I'll claim I'm the champ and build a fight with Bivol.
I think I might owe an apology to the IBF. Which title is? It's the WBC title. Of course, Benavidez is a Mexican American, but he's Mexican. And Mauricio Sulaiman, who's a very nice person, but he's becoming more and more like his dad, making these decisions, showing certain favoritism. But he's a nice guy, Mauricio. I keep emphasizing that. And he has Benavidez' back.
He won Force Canelo to fight Benavidez. Isn't that something? It's 68.
Yeah, but what did Benavidez do as a light heavyweight? He had one big win over David Morrell. Kudos to him. Was that at 175 or 168?
Yes.
175. Right. So he got one big win, one fight basically. So you could fight in one division the whole time. Okay, at least it makes a little sense. He beat a heck of a good light heavyweight in David Morrell. So
but Jack, you say he only has one good win. How many guys say have one good win?
Yeah, well, he's had one. Okay, listen, Benavidez is a heck of a fighter. He deserves the opportunity. I would love to see him fight the winner, of Bivol, and Beterbiev. I would love to see that, especially Benavidez and Beterbiev. Benavidez right, Beterbiev. That'd be fireworks.
Benavidez against either one of those guys would be fireworks. And look, Bivol can always fight Beterbiev or Benavidez, as Joe Bergman said. And you know what, Jack? I think Bivol's doing the right thing, because I thought he shaded Beterbiev the first time. He beat him the second time, I think, pretty much conclusively. And I think he'll put more distance between them in the third fight because Beterbiev getting older.
But what would you rather see if you had a choice right now as a fan? Would you rather see Bivol in with, Benavidez or the rubber match with Beterbiev? You have a choice, one fight, one or the other. You just have to pick.
I want to see Bivol against Benavidez.
You see, I'm different. I want to see him against Beterbiev, maybe because I think Beterbiev won the first fight, but I may have been partial towards him. But then again, I picked Beterbiev to win the rematch, okay? And he didn't do it, and I scored the rematch for Bivol. So I listen, they're one apiece. Trilogy.
I'm just tired of seeing guys fight each other over and over, Jack.
Well, but that's quality trilogies. This was the first fight Beterbiev has lost. He deserves the chance.
He does. He does.
And we deserve a little more of a conclusive answer. Who's better?
Wait a second. Does he deserve a chance at Bivol again or a chance at the title? I think they're two different things. They're 1-1. It just so happens to be that Bivol has the title. I think I would rather see Bivol fight Benavidez because I think I know how the Beterbiev fight goes. We've seen it twice, 24 rounds. And then if Benavidez beats Bivol, he has to fight Beterbiev. The winner has to fight Beterbiev. I'll go there. But I don't have a hard time if Bivol would fight him again or fight Benavidez.
They're one apiece. Rubber matches are really good when they're one apiece. And it seems pretty even, okay?
But two guys locked the title up with that, Jack, and I don't like that. I want to see the other guy get a shot.
They've been the dominant light heavyweights. They were entitled to lock up the title for the time being. Benavidez is the new kid in the light heavyweight division. He's not being screwed over, Frank.
He's got two good wins in the division, and he pretty much cleaned out the 168 division except for Canelo, the only guy that wouldn't fight him.
What was two good wins in the division, Benavidez?
That's a big thing today, Jack. How many guys have them? And the guys that do, we laud.
He got
Parker
one over David Morrell.
That's a good win. And he beat Vosnik, and he beat.
That is a wonderful win. But listen, in the meantime, you could have Benavidez fight Callum Smith on the undercard of Beterbiev Bivol. Get a nice
that works.
He'll win. He'll be in line to fight the winner, and it's going to create more interest, and it's going to be a better payday for him in all probability.
Jack, you also forget that Benavidez fought your guy who fights so much, I can't remember his name. Who was that good boxer, the southpaw, that had one big fight and he lost to Benavidez in 7 rounds? Who was it? Again, I forget the guy's name that you liked.
Demetrius Andrade.
He beat him too. What's the difference between 6 or 7 pounds? They all go up and down.
No, my thing is, you're saying fighters shouldn't be allowed to tie a division up by having like 3 fights. Because it's holding up deserving fighters who deserve the opportunity. Benavidez has not been in the light heavyweight division long. It's not like he's been waiting for his opportunity in that division.
I don't care, Jack. He's been fighting quality guys in the weight class at or around the weight class. And I'm going to give him credit for that. He has 4 really good, credible wins on his record. How many other guys do that?
He's a heck of a fighter. I'm not disputing that. I like seeing him fight. I mean, he might not be the monster we're making him out to be, though. I mean, he fought Vosnik and he went the distance. Okay? Morrell.
Okay, and the only time Vosnik was stopped by Beterbiev.
Listen, he didn't stop Morrell. It was a heck of a victory. Kudos to Benavidez. That's a big victory. But it was a competitive fight.
I don't care. He didn't stop him, Jack. It's styles. He won the fight. That's what you're supposed to do.
We talked about George Foreman last week.
Never heard of him.
Not have 2 distance fights in a row against top guys. monsters like Foreman, Sonny Liston, they'll go the distance once in a while, like Liston with Eddie Machen, Foreman did with Peralta, but then they'll knock out the next guy, stop them.
Well, who said that Benavidez is George Foreman? I never said that.
He's being made out to be this monster and all, and that's what.
Well, today everybody has a couple of knockouts as the monster.
Inui is called a monster, really, but people have called Benavidez that as well.
Yeah, Inui knocks everybody out, basically.
Yeah. You don't necessarily have to knock opponents out. It depends the quality. Benavidez beating David Morrell, that in itself is good enough. All right, Jack, let's talk about a couple fights that happened this weekend. Let's get the ugly one out of the way. We both saw Joe Joyce fight Philip Hargovic. Joe Joyce has to retire. There's nowhere to go. I hate to see the guy take punches, and just because he doesn't go down or get wobbled doesn't mean they're going to affect him later. He's a limited guy. He's slow as molasses. He's getting slower. He brings nothing to the ring except I'm strong and I'm hard to hurt. And that doesn't make for a good later life. I think he should be gone, although his reason is the job pays good, but there is a price to pay for that well-paying job. There's been a price to pay. You look, Derek Chisora is having one final fight, and he wants it to be for the title. And I'm not questioning whether he's deserving or not. He's been a credit to the sport, with the effort he put forth. Chisora should have been retired long ago. I mean, the punishment that he's taking, once in a while a fighter can get lucky and escape it. But what gets me too, we hear, well, they pass all their medicals. So
we know that's a joke.
It's a complete joke, just like the cornermen are complete jokes, and the ringside physicians, for the most part, are too. Fighters are getting beaten up badly, and they say, okay, we're going to stop it. And then they ask, do you want to continue? We'll give you one more round. And it's a hopeless cause, and I love the way one referee once said to me, I pulled him on the side. I didn't like the way he refereed a fight, and I'm friendly with him. And he said, yeah, but I wanted to give the fighter every opportunity to come back. And I said, yeah, you were giving him every opportunity to come back, and you were giving him every opportunity to sustain permanent damage down the line. That's what you were doing. And,
Jack, it's a tough call, but here's why I'm okay with Chisora. Because whatever damage has been done. And I don't think that one fight is going to make a difference on how he is the rest of his life. The 50th fight is not going to push him over the ledge. He's already over the ledge. Unless he dies, I don't think it's going to affect him that much. And I think he deserves the title shot. And as you said, he's been a good ambassador. He always gives a good fight. And it's like, if I'm his corner, I just have a quick hook.
Well, he had a title shot against Tyson Fury and got stopped. It seemed a couple of years ago or so. But Chisora.
Good point, Joe.
But in the case of certain fighters, if they really need the money, if it's life-altering money, okay, I would look the other way. They're making a decision, on their well-being. And I can't tell someone not to fight if it's life-altering money. If they already have the money or the money's not so significant, anyone listening out there, just look up, I forgot the opponent's name, you might remember it, Frank, but go to YouTube, find Jerry Quarry's last fight when he was about 46 years old.
Ron Kramer.
Ron Kramer, thanks. And you're going to see Quarry take so many head-snapping blows. Now, Frank, your logic would have been, well, any damage.
No, Jack, that wasn't for a title. That was a joke. That was a 6-round fight. Chisora's getting a title shot against the best heavyweight in the world who's not a big puncher.
At this point, if Chisora can get the huge payday, the opportunity, then he wants to take it. I just shrug. Okay, you want to take it. It's your life, your well-being. I'm not arguing with him.
Jack, I'm good with it. Usyk is not a mean guy. He's not a big puncher, and they can always stop the fight when it looks like it's getting out of hand. But I think he's paid his dues enough. He's known the risk of boxing his whole. Okay, so I'm okay with him, but not Joe Joyce.
Joe Joyce is getting paid well. You know what the whole idea was, Hrgovic, that fight? I hope I'm pronouncing his name okay.
Hrgovic.
Right. I'll still get it wrong.
Well, you get most of them. You get them. You do them better than I do.
But if they wanted badly, the powers that be, for Joe Joyce to win that fight, because if Joe Joyce won, Frank Warren could make a Daniel Dubois fight in a snap of a finger because Joyce
it's a grudge.
Knocked out Dubois before. And so the rematch, Dubois, and they could say, well, Joyce still has a lot left because he beat a contender, Hrgovic, so on. But Joyce can't get over the top. He just can't, He did look a little better than in previous fights, a little quicker, a little better. He had tremendous heart, in this fight, tremendous determination.
Jack, he pushes his punches. They take forever to get there.
Yeah, well, listen, he's an average heavyweight, but there are fights out there that are still going to be there for him. You can match him with Big Baby Miller if you want on an undercard. You could match him with Jared Anderson, Richard Torres, who we'll talk about, a little later. Guys like that, there are fights out there. But the question is, Frank, can Joyce beat anyone now?
No, unless they stick their chin out and they let him hit him a few times, maybe he has a shot. But he's not going to beat anybody that's live. And since you mentioned it, let's go into it. We saw Richard Torres fight. Richard Torres, Jack, is not quite. And look, I never thought he was the next Mike Tyson, but he has a little way to go. He loads up on all his shots. He doesn't set anything up. He gets a little bit wild, and he was tied up very easy by Vianello the other night. I was not impressed. I know we're tough judges, and maybe we set the bar too high. But even on a slow track like this heavyweight division, I think that Torres is. I'm not even as sure as he was good as Big Baby Anderson. He's not that skilled. He just has the power.
Well, you read my mind. I did a report for Boxing News on that show. And I put a little suggestion to the end. Top Rank promotes Jared Anderson and they promote Richard Torres. They can make that fight. And Richard Torres says he'll fight anyone.
I believe
him. I believe him.
Me too.
Believe him. If they let him fight Jared Anderson. But the problem with most of these promotional groups and Top Rank, certainly amongst them, they're more interested in promoting and building a guy up than making really fan-friendly fights. And wouldn't that be a great matchup, Torres and Anderson? They're both 25 years old. They're still
Jack,
both young.
It would be, but let me ask you this. So just give me yes or no answers. If you're Torres's people, do you take that fight?
Yes.
If you're Anderson's people, do you take that fight?
Yes. And let me tell you why.
I'm not sure because there's nothing to gain for the winner and everything to lose.
You see, that's why you always support the promoters, Frank. The way they
no, Jack, I'm just telling you how they think and the way the game's played.
I know the way the promoters think and I know the way the game's played, but there gets to a point, okay? You have to put up or shut up. One of the managers in boxing, manages a few fighters, is a close friend of mine. I'm not going to say his name, but we were talking about one of his fighters that's an up-and-coming fighter. And I said, you're going to have to match him with so-and-so eventually. You don't want to waste your time. Either he's good enough or he's not good enough. Okay? You can keep building up with all these soft fights. Jared Anderson, no pun intended, but Baby Anderson's been babied a while already. You'd agree on that, right?
Yes.
Okay, now's the time. He got stopped by Piccoli. Credit to him for fighting Piccoli. And Torres finally has to step up. If he can't beat, let's say he loses to Jared Anderson, it doesn't mean his career's over. Frank, you could still, move forward with him. He'll take a gentle step back, go back to the gym, continue fighting, and the people forget it. They'll forgive him. Daniel Dubois fought Joe Joyce, and I give tremendous credit to Frank Warren. 2 unbeaten heavyweights. Those are his heavyweights. I think he was counting on Dubois to win, but Joyce upset him. But Dubois came back from that.
But Dubois was an upper contender then, Jack. Torres is not there yet. I know what we want to see, but look, Torres's goal when he got into boxing, and the same thing as Anderson, they want to get the money and they want to get the title. And they know today, if you are defeated on the way up, I mean, look, we're talking about Big Baby. He lost to a guy that some people thought was the next George Foreman, and nobody has any time for him now. They know that in this sport, it's not like MMA. In this sport, once you lose, people call you a bum, and you have to go to the back of the line and start over. So if Torres fights Anderson and vice versa, Jack, if Big Baby Anderson beats Torres, you're going to be saying on here the Monday afterwards, well, who's Torres fought? He's not all that good. I don't want to hear about how good Big Baby is. And the same thing.
But Anderson,
if Torres wins,
position for meaningful fight. You know what I'd like to see, Frank? Give me a fourth name. In the American heavyweight tournament to crown an American champion. That might be a little fun. You put Torres, Anderson, Deontay Wilder, and Big Baby Miller if you want to have some fun. Am I missing a meaningful American heavyweight? Because it's pretty pathetic, I think, the pickings. I'm probably missing someone. Don't tell me Andy Ruiz, please.
Anyone that knows me well knows that my 2 favorite detective shows were Columbo and Rockford. And some people used to say to Columbo when he had the killer cornered and he was going on the whole bit, the guy said, you know what, you have some kind of an imagination, Lieutenant Columbo. Jack, you have some kind of an imagination. That's never going to happen. That's what we had the North American Boxing Federation title. If we even still have that, that's what that used to be. That was the American champion.
Yeah, these things like an NABF title, this or that, it sounds good anytime you say it's for title. And fighters like to hold up belts. It could be the Twiddlywinks belt, but they're holding it up in the air and they feel good about it. And I saw firsthand like little things like regional titles, a state title, or this or that, just like holding belts up. But Richard Torres, getting back to him, he's only 25. It was only his 13th fight.
I like him, Jack, and he's very willing.
Yes, yeah, he's very willing. I don't think he has a tremendous amount of upside. That's the thing about it. I mean, I think he can still improve. I still think he can get better. But there's nothing quite special about him that leads me to believe he can ever possibly show any level of domination in the heavyweight division.
Here's his problem, Jack. Richard Torres is a swarmer. In the history of the gloved era, say 1881 through today, there's been 4 great swarmers, and we could have had a 5th, but he didn't pan out. Jack Dempsey, Rocky Marciano, Smokin' Joe, and Tyson. And Tua could have been that guy, but he just wasn't good at cutting the ring off. He was easy to tie up, so he didn't quite make it. But today, Jack, because these guys are so big, imagine if Vianello could pop. And Torres, being 6'2", is not small, so he has to get inside. For whoever he fights, he has to get inside, and there's a price to pay fighting that style. Because if you look at all the great swarmers, none of them lasted past age 32, and Torres is not as skilled as those guys, and the guys are bigger. So I think he has a hard way to go.
I don't know if Rocky Marciano a swarmer in that sense. Dempsey, yes. Tyson, yes.
Jack, Rocky was a swarmer. He had to get inside. He couldn't fight backing up. He had to force it. That's a swarmer.
I think of a swarmer, someone who's very fast on their feet moving forward. Very fast on their feet. Frazier was very fast on his feet moving forward. Dempsey was very fast on his feet moving forward. Tyson, I think, was pretty
Tyson
quick.
had good feet.
Yeah, I don't think.
I think Rocky was too, Jack, because he had to get inside. He had a 67-inch reach. Who's he beating outside? He's got to get inside and be a volume puncher, and there's a price to pay for that. I mean, Torres was getting hit with some big shots, and you know what? He wasn't really hurt, but he was rocked a little bit. I'm thinking, wow, VNL could punch. You know, it's just the hardest style to fight, Jack. It's my favorite style. It's the style when I was an amateur that I had to implore because I wasn't skilled like a lot of the other guys that can move around, jab, and, you know, throw right hands on their toes. I had to get inside, make it a street fight. And I think Torres is sort of that guy. So when you fight that style, you need endless stamina. You need a big punch. And it helps if you can make the guy miss and take his jab away. I'm not sure Torres is that guy. So that's another reason why, through this conversation, that's another reason why I'd be careful with matching him with Anderson next, because I don't know how long his future is, and I got to take care of him.
Frank, if he can't beat Jared Anderson, you're gonna get your answer eventually, unless you think Torres is gonna improve a great deal, and you want to hold him off from fights like that. But
Jack, I'd rather get the answers that he stinks and we make a lot of money than isn't that good and we made none.
But if he beats Anderson, he could be in the position for something really meaningful, that maybe one of the sanctioning bodies, you know, they do their business again. They strip so-and-so.
But it's a close call if he could beat him, Jack. It's a close call. I can make a case either way.
But those are the fights to make. Those are the fights to make. Don't discourage.
But that's not the world we live in now, Jack. I agree with you. I think it'll be a great fight. But that's not going. They don't look at it that way. Look, they don't want to find out if Torres is any good. They want to get him to a title shot and hope he gets lucky and they get a couple paydays out of it. If he fights Jared Anderson, they're going to have their answer to both, that we're not going to make the big money. And, you know, he's not.
Torres fight. He stepped up against Vianello. Who would you now have him fight? If you don't want to fight Jared Anderson, you figure it's too big a risk. What are you going to do? You're going to get a couple of real pushovers?
I'm going to find a guy that has a name that's on a losing streak at the end of his career, like they always do, like Chisora or Joe Joyce, somebody like that. That's why Joe Joyce won't retire, because there's still a market for him.
But in the real world, the way things are now, no one's going to pay for Torres and Joe Joyce. It's not enough money for Joe Joyce. They're not going to give Joe Joyce $100,000 and he's going to come over from England for a fight like that. He's just not going to do it. Joe Joyce would sooner get a couple of very soft victories and then maybe gets a fight with Anthony Joshua for $1.5 million.
Jack, they could find a way to make it. But I'll just tell you this much. I will bet you anything you want that Richard Torres will not be fighting Big Baby Anderson next. He will be fighting a guy that has a name that's older on the slide.
Yeah, by the way, Deontay Wilder's fighting in June. I forgot the opponent's name. Not a recognizable name. But he's fighting someone in June. He's continuing his career.
Would you let Torres fight Wilder?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Wilder, now there's a perfect opponent for him.
Well, if the fight can be made, would Wilder take the fight? Maybe Wilder's seen Torres.
What does Wilder have to gain by beating Richard Torres?
I don't think Wilder has a punch anymore, not the way he had before. So
no.
I don't think he's the threat he was before. But yeah, okay. But Wilder, the last I heard, he fought, for the PBC, even though he had a fight for His Excellency. So speaking of that, I hear through the grapevine, Frank, through my friends in the business, okay, that the promoters aren't too happy with His Excellency because he's bringing Dana White in. They've kind of felt a bit used by His Excellency. So something is going to go down. If His Excellency is going all out with Dana White, the other promoters, okay, who he's done business with, he's not going to be doing quite the same business with him as before, even though
Not if White's his confidant, no.
But everyone does have a price for a given fight, and any promoter would take the big money to continue to work. But they're not too thrilled with them. I mean, they'll, so this marriage of happiness with His Excellency and all these promoters isn't quite there. Look for something to go down. I'm going to see how revealing things are, Frank. They're having a show at Times Square on May 2nd, a good triple header. They're putting on the Saudis. Teofimo Lopez against Arnold Barboza, a high-quality fight. Devin Haney against Jose Ramirez. Good fight, even though Ramirez...
That's a good fight.
It's a good fight. And then the return of Ryan Garcia against Raleigh Romero. The fight doesn't do much for me, but considering Garcia's layoff, this and that, and it because it's Ryan Garcia, it has a level of interest, okay? But the point is, if I can't get press credentials for that show that I, put in, that's kind of revealing because I hear the little hanky-pankies going on with how the Saudis are trying to control the narrative, in the sport. That's what I hear through the grapevine, but that hasn't been confirmed yet.
Jack, after you just ran those names by, you know what? Devin Haney has the toughest fight on that card of the three of them.
You wouldn't say the Barboza fight with Teofimo Lopez, even though I
mean, it's
sport.
close, but Ramirez is not. That's not an automatic win for a damage if he is Devin Haney coming off that fight.
I think Haney might very well be damaged. Okay.
Well, if he is, Ramirez still has enough left to tell us.
Yeah. Well,
what did you? You didn't see Tim Tszew's fight, right, against Joey Spencer?
No, I didn't see it. Speaking of a fighter who's been damaged, that's Tim Tszyu. I can't imagine him being the fighter that I thought he might be.
Jack, I don't want to say he looked tentative. He wasn't as aggressive all out as he used to be. He had a guy in front of him who he should beat, and he did beat. He beat him conclusively. But as I said, it was a get your feet wet fight again to get back in the swing of it, to getting hit. But he didn't have at least to me, it didn't look like he had the same zeal and aggression that he had before he went on his losing streak.
Yeah, well, listen, his career was basically on the line against Joey Spencer, and
oh, right, he couldn't lose.
I mean, I was really shocked when he lost to Sebastian Fundora. Really, shocked when he lost that fight, and then he followed up and he lost the fight after that, and then this was to basically salvage his career. But to keep it going now, we have to hear Keith Thurman challenging Tim Tszyu in Australia, because no one gives a darn about Keith Thurman here in the United States. But in Australia, him and Tim Tszyu does good business. And Thurman, you have certain fighters that think more like businessmen than fighters, okay? And I think Keith Thurman is
that guy
100% businessman first and foremost. And listen, not that it's necessarily so wrong. Mayweather was both, but at least he was a fighter and he'd think like a fighter, but he was a businessman big time too, manipulating stuff and so on. Years ago I talked with Shane McGuigan, okay, the trainer from the UK, during a time he was training David Haye. And there was talk about David Haye fighting Anthony Joshua. And I said to Shane, what I think the problem is with the guy David Haye? He's more businessman than fighter now. And Shane McGuigan didn't argue with me. He didn't confirm it, but he didn't say, no, you're wrong. But then he said, yeah, but what about Anthony Joshua? He's more businessman than fighter. That's kind of an interesting thing. But Anthony Joshua was willing to fight anyone,
Yeah, you can't take that away from him. He ducked nobody.
But what's he doing now? Does he want to fight? You know what it is? When guys are so inactive and they only fight once in a while, it's either just for the money or they want to keep their hand in the game. They fight once in a while because they want to be relevant. When a guy retires, he's not relevant the same way unless he's an icon. A Sugar Ray Leonard, a Floyd Mayweather, those guys, a Mike Tyson, those guys are icons. Those guys could walk into any arena having been long retired, and there's going to be a big buzz. They're treated like stars. They can get away with it. But the rest of the fighters, once they retire, it's something is lost.
Did you see Janibek fight the middleweight for the IBF WBO title? I can't pronounce the name he fought. I saw clips of that. All I can say is this. The middleweight division that I've seen recently is a slow track, but Janibek is pretty good. I like how he throws nice tight punches. He really disguises his right hook good. I mean, it's hard to tell because I'm not sure who he was in there with, but he's a guy that has potential, and I think he was yelling for Canelo. He's never going to see that. They all do that. And Joe Bergman, by the way, you're right about Tszyu, but I thought he lacked a little aggression and just looked a little bit like, I know I'm going to win this fight, but I think Tim Tszyu 2 years ago would have tore through Spencer.
Well, didn't he stop him in 4 rounds?
Rounds, right.
I didn't see the fights. I assume he did tear through him.
He didn't tear through him, Jack. He beat him up a little bit, but he could have beat him up worse. He just took a little while to get a little bit going to get his confidence back. I thought that's what I saw. He didn't look totally in tune for a couple of rounds.
I just want to refer to something.
And he's an attacker, and he didn't attack as much as he normally does.
Yeah, I don't mean to be all over the place, Frank, but I wanted to make a comment earlier in the show because I'm very fond of this fight. I like him a lot, Junior Jones, okay? And at the peak value. For a year and a half during his career, Junior Jones was an all-time great, beating Barrera twice and Ellis. Think of that. 3 wins. So he was an all-time great fighter for about a year and a half. Same way with a fighter like Pepino Cuevas. For maybe, a year and a half, 2.
He had 8 or 9 title defenses.
Oh, he was a great fight, but he was great. But they didn't sustain it, these guys, at all. So that's what we mean, peak value. You know what I'm seeing on the news later? I don't know whether I ever ran this by you. I think we did touch upon it. I don't remember what you said. Tony Ayala, Frank. We keep hearing this talk, well, if Ayala not gone in prison, he would have beaten Leonard, he would have beaten Hagler, he would have beaten Duran, he would have this and that.
He would have been a player in the division. I'm not going to go as far as those guys. But he wouldn't have been a walkover for anybody, I don't think.
His style.
I saw him fight amateur, so I'm a little bit jaded because he was really good.
Style-wise, he may have been a major problem for Tommy Hearns. I don't know, does Tommy Hearns cope with him? I'm not sure. Because Ayala being like a wild man, very durable, especially the first few rounds, attacking with a fury. Man, that's a tough fight.
But he has that right hand, and Ayala was dropped by Maldonado, even in his prime. And if Hearns catches him with that right hand, that could be one of those fights that who gets there first. And speaking of Hearns, Jack, the other day, it popped up on my feed. And I hate this fight because I know the guy that lost, and then he lost his life 9 days later in a motorcycle accident. The James Schuler-Hearns fight. Jack, James Schuler took some left hooks from Hearns in that first round to the body. I don't know how it didn't crease him. I don't know how it didn't break him in half. Hearns threw some of the best left hooks to the body I ever saw. And going into that fight, I told some guys, because I used to train with Schuler, sparred him a few times. He was a real prospect and really talented. And I thought, this is not a walkover for Hearns like a lot of people think it is. And if this is a fight, if he can go rounds, it could be interesting. But boy, Hearns hit him with that right hand, and that was pretty much the end of it. But before he hit him with that right hand, he hit him with some left hooks to the body, Jack. that just had to take something out of Shore to freeze him and get him upright for that right hand.
Yeah, it's sad the case of James Schuler, the way, got killed after the Hearns fight.
I think he was 22-0 going into that fight for the NABF title. And at the wake, Hearns tried to put the belt that he won in that fight in Schuler's casket, and that Schuler family said, no, you won the fight. It's your belt. They wouldn't take it.
Classy move by Hearns, though I'm sure was appreciated.
Absolutely. And when you speak about Hearns, Jack, you have to speak about Leonard and Hagler. And yesterday was the 38th anniversary of the Leonard Hagler fight. We talk about it on the anniversary, Jack, and we always go back. Is it the most debated decision, at least in modern history? Can you think of a fight that they debate more, except maybe Alley and Norton?
Yeah, I think it's no. The most debated decision is Leonard and Hagler, and I don't see why. I mean, you can make a case if you really want to for Hagler winning the fight. I don't think he did. I think Leonard won either 7 rounds to 5, 8 rounds to 4. In that territory, either swing how you want to do it. But you never know. Even Charles Mooney, Leonard's buddy, was telling me, well, Hagler maybe got the better of the actual fighting, but Ray created an impression. And yeah, but that's part of it, creating an impression, flurrying this and that. And I just don't see it as being that much of a controversial decision. The third Ali Norton fight, I had more uncertainty with. But the reason I think Frank Leonard and Hagler is more debated is I think there's a narrative out there, a false one, that Norton got robbed in the third Ali fight. That's the narrative. He didn't get robbed.
You don't think some people think Hagler got robbed?
Yeah, but we know. Come on, that's absurd to say Hagler actually got robbed. If you want to say Hagler won the fight, you want to swing him all the close rounds, put in his column, you can make a case for him winning the fight if you gave him all the close rounds. Look, it happened in a couple of other fights too. Leonard won 5 rounds clearly. Hagler won 2 rounds clearly. There were 5 swing rounds. If you wanted to give Hagler all 5 swing rounds, yeah, he won the fight. If you want to give Leonard all 5 swing rounds, then don't criticize Jojo Guerrera. Then he got it right with his 118, 110. Or if you want to give Hagler 3 of the 5 swing rounds, then Leonard wins 7-5. And that's giving Hagler the edge in the swing rounds,
Jack, I went to see the Hagler-Leonard fight on closed circuit in Pennsauken. And to me, that was the most, in my lifetime, that was the second most anticipated fight where I wanted to see these two guys get together. Now, at that time, I was a bigger Hagler fan than Leonard, even though I always liked Leonard better. But I didn't like Leonard a little bit with his showmanship and a little bit of his business acumen where he picked his spots. But I knew when he asked for the fight, and the former writer for the Daily News, Mike Katz, did say this at the time. He said, look, he goes, everybody's overlooking this. He goes, Hagler was minding his own business. Leonard is the one that asked for the fight. And to me, Jack, if I call you out for 5 years and you turn me down, and then one day you knock at my front door and say, come on, Frank, let's go. I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to be a little leery because I'm going to think, okay, what changed? For 5 years, this guy didn't want any peace. He's calling for me. He's asking for the fight. So that made me think that Leonard knew something and saw something, and I picked him to win. But there was a part of me that I almost wanted to jinx him because I was afraid, because at that time when that fight happened, I was 29, and I was still in that stage where I had my perfect world where this guy has to be here, this guy has to be here, and I was afraid if Leonard won the fight, he would eclipse Ali, as a star. So I was kind of pulling for Hagler. And I tell you all that for one reason. As you said, JoJo Guerra had it 10-2. I had it when I was walking out of the fight, discussing with my best friend. I said, I had it 8-4, and I think I was being generous to Hagler because I was pulling for him to win. So the night of the fight, Jack, it looked like Leonard just won most of the exchanges. Hagler missed him wildly sometimes. He looked like his feet were in the mud. Other than an uppercut in the 5th round, he never really had Leonard in trouble. And then in the 9th round, when he had Leonard against the ropes and Leonard stood there and traded with him, that was an even exchange.
No, not in the 9th round. Hagler
I thought it was.
Uppercuts. No, that wasn't. No. Hagler hurt. He jawed Leonard at the end of it.
I thought Leonard answered him, Jack, and evened it up.
I think the key to the fight was Leonard's resiliency. He bent at times a little bit. I don't mean he was hurt, but he bent, but he didn't break. He was always able to come back. He was so resilient. Okay. And that's what happened when Hagler a couple of times had him in the corner, looked like he was maybe hurting him. Leonard would bounce right back. Okay.
But Jack, here was the other thing too. And this was my thinking going in the fight. Number one, Leonard takes a better punch than people give him credit for. 2, Hagler is never going to catch him with more than one shot that's a monster shot, that's a finisher. And 3, I felt Hagler off of the Hearns fight was overrated as a puncher. I mean, when people think of Hagler, they see the bald head and the muscles, and they think he's a guy like Tyson, but he's really not. He's more of a boxer and a technician. So I computed Leonard has a better chin. Hagler can't ice him with one, and he's never going to get more than one. And I think Hagler as a puncher at this level is a little bit overrated, and that's why I picked him to win the fight, because I really felt it was a style matchup, and I felt that Duran, he didn't have Leonard's legs, but by backing up and forcing Hagler to fight as the aggressor, I thought set him up for counters as it did against Duran. And I just processed Leonard's faster, hits harder than Duran at that weight. And I just thought it was going to be his night. And the fact that it was 12 rounds, he cut the race a little bit. And I thought that all worked to his favor.
But I will say this, the Hagler that fought Hearns, if that was the same exact Hagler, it came out the way he did against Hearns, a couple of years younger, Leonard doesn't win that night against Hagler. If it was the way Hagler came out against Hearns, he didn't come out that way against Leonard. Imagine he came out that way against Hearns, sleepwalking. I think Hagler would have eventually gotten.
I think Hagler knew he had to do that against Hearns, Jack. I think, and he knew if he did that against Leonard, he looked like a fool. Why didn't he come out like that then?
Somehow fighters sometimes aren't mentally sharp for a fight for whatever reason. And they, a few rounds they take to get warmed up. They find themselves in a big hole, and then they finally have to get going. The fight was lost for Hagler really in the first 4 rounds. The first 6 rounds were easy to score. Leonard won the first 4 rounds. I don't see how one of the judges, Lou Filippo, gave Hagler 2 of the 4 rounds. What did he do in those rounds? Nothing. He won the 5th. Leonard won the 6th. And then you could say that most of the rounds from 7 to 12, and Hagler won the 9th. But then round 7, 8, 10, 11, and 12 were pretty much toss-up rounds for the most part.
Jack, okay. But if you're Hagler, okay, because I'm one of those guys, I don't believe in the biggest moments they decide to do something stupid. Like, I don't believe Ali played rope-a-dope with Frazier just because he wanted to make him look bad. I think he realized he wasn't going to knock him out, and he had to rest to finish the race. David Tua talked a great fight until Lennox Lewis hit him, and then I never saw him become more, discouraged than he did in that fight. Here, Hagler has a chance to fight the guy who he has been chasing for 5 years, the guy that he thought was a coward, the guy that he thought was afraid of him. And they get in the ring, and Hagler knew that was a defining fight of his career. Why would he get in there, Jack, and be passive unless he didn't feel he could get to Leonard?
If you get the mindset, Leonard was coming off a long layoff. His last fight was against Kevin Howard. Leonard looked like he didn't have it anymore. He retired after the Howard fight. Kevin Howard knocked Leonard down. Leonard stopped Howard in the 9th round controversially. The referee stopped it a little too quickly, that fight. And Kevin,
so you think Hagler was overconfident?
He had to be extremely confident. I don't think Hagler seriously thought he could lose this fight. He said all the right things. He expects a tough fight. He expects this, expects that. And Leonard was coming off with a long layoff. And Leonard, the reason Leonard called him out, Leonard has a big ego, let's be honest. He wanted to be a star again. He wanted to be in the mega event. This was his way to get in the mega event. To Leonard, it was less about a comeback. It was about the event, fighting Hagler, the challenge of fighting Hagler. Not, oh, I'm coming back. I want to win some world titles.
No, it was Hagler.
Right. Leonard even said after the fight, and I think he meant it, Hagler could have the title back. If they sat down in a room afterwards, Ray and Hagler said, and Hagler said to Ray, I really would like this title back. You can make your money without the title. And Ray probably would have said, okay, Marvin, you can have the title as long as I get my money in the,
Jack, the other thing was, during those years, Leonard was commentating on HBO and Hagler was fighting on HBO. So Leonard was there and watched all his fights. So I know he studied them. And the other thing is, Leonard was ringside for the Mugabe fight because that was on Showtime. And he saw how often Mugabe got hit, or Mugabe hit Hagler in that fight. And then in center ring, Hagler said, this may be the last time you saw me. So you could tell he was thinking about not fighting again. And I think Leonard probably sensed he slipped. His head's not in it. This is going to be my last chance to make a go at it. And he did. But I'll give Leonard credit for this. He negotiated the rounds and the size of the gloves. Well, not the rounds, because Hagler's previous 2 fights were 12 rounds against Hearns and Mugabe. But he didn't make him come into the catch weight. Leonard had never fought at 160 before. Even when he fought Geraldo, he wasn't close to 160. And I'll give Leonard credit for that. But I think Leonard, I think he waited for the right time. And I think Floyd Mayweather studied some of Leonard in doing that.
Well, Hagler got paid a couple of $1 million more than Leonard.
And Leonard was willing to make that concession.
Yeah, and Hagler did it for the money. Hagler was so anxious to just have the fight. He'd given to just about any Leonard demand just for him to get in the ring. So he figured, okay, you want 12 rounds instead of 15, we'll do 12 rounds. You want to know something, Frank? If it was a 15-rounder, Leonard still would have won. I know some people feel, well, Hagler would have had him. Maybe Hagler probably wins 2 of the 3 last rounds, a scenario like that. But Leonard would have seen it.
I can't say that, Jack, because it's a 15-round fight. They fight a different style. I'm not sure how it goes. They had 12. They both knew it. Leonard won the fight. But you know what's interesting of that, Jack? Of those 4 guys, Hearns, Duran, Leonard, and Hagler, Hagler took the least punishment, and he was the only one that got out at the right time. I mean, yeah. God rest his soul, but he was the only one of those guys that got out at the right time. It's like, I don't think he had the best career of those guys. That's a discussion for another night. But he's the only one that retired at the right time.
Well, you take all of them, Hearns, Leonard, Hagler, Duran, and pick the best spot in every guy's career when they should have gotten out. And the guy who would be number 1, if you drew the line, would have been Roberto
Duran after Leonard.
After beating Leonard, nothing Leonard, Hagler, Hearns, or maybe any other fighter ever did. Did Ali, if Ali quit at a certain point.
After Foreman would have been perfect.
After Foreman. That means he wouldn't have had to fight Thrill in Manila, which built up his status. So let's say he quit after Manila. Let's forget health concerns, Frank, and all that. We're coming to an end. That's an interesting thing for next week. Could anyone have topped Duran's moment had he retired after the first Leonard fight?
One of the best wins in boxing history.
Yeah.
Okay, that's about it. Until next week, we will see you then. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a great week. Jack and I both like Houston to beat Florida tonight, by the way.